So when you're moving to a new town or thinking about where your dream home is, one of the biggest deciding factors in that potentially could be the schools and the school district. And so today what we're going to do, because we've had people asking about this, is talk about our school district here in Northern Nevada. And what I did is I brought in one of my good friends, Kate Carter, who has lived here for a long time, has been a teacher in this school district, and whose kids have gone to school here. So Kate, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And so how long have you actually lived in Reno?
30 years.
30 years. We've been here. I've actually been here longer than you. I didn't even realize.
Yeah, 30 years.
And so you've been a teacher for how long?
25.
25. And we did have a little 1 year, 2 year gap.
I took a break, yes.
Took a break. And can you tell people, like, teaching for, I think it was almost 20 years, and then you took, was it 1 year or two?
I took 1 year off.
1 year off. And why would a teacher that taught for all these years decide I need a year?
It was a mental thing for me. It's a hard job. Mm-hmm. And we are on all day long, every single day. And I don't care if you're having a good day or a bad day personally, you better go in and you better be doing your circus performance for those kids, because that's what it's all about. That's why the kids want to come to school. They don't want to be there because they love math that much. They want to be there because they want to see their friends and they want to hang out, and they, they maybe want to see their favorite teacher. And it just got to be a pretty heavy mental load for me. So I took a year off. I thought I was not going to go back, and I missed it. And so...
Well, I was going to ask you, because I knew when you and I had talked, like when you had taken that year break off and you were working at a location really close to where my office is. And I think at first you were enjoying having a break from teaching.
Yes.
But then it didn't take long for you to be like, man, I really enjoyed doing that all these years.
I miss the kids.
Yeah. I say, well, what grades have you taught over the years?
I have taught second grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and then I've moved to middle school, so sixth, seventh, and eighth grade.
So were you at multiple schools? I mean, obviously you've been at least two schools.
I think this is my seventh school in 25 years. I don't move around a lot. Once I find a school that I really enjoy, I stay there.
Well, I think for teachers and people that don't know this, like, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff as to why a teacher wants to stay or go from a specific school, which we can talk about that on another day. But when people move and come here, it's funny because people will say, I want to be in the good unquote school district.
Right.
And what's so funny is my girlfriend lives in Washington. She lives in a city of 100,000 people, and they have 7 school districts.
We have 1.
And we have 1. And what people don't realize, and when I did a little research on this, we go all the way up to unincorporated areas of Verdi, Incline, Gerlach. I was like, I didn't realize that we spread out that far.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's a huge school district. So when I did my research, it was like 100 plus schools and 65,000 students. And there was like 3,500-ish teachers, because you couldn't find a real exact number trying to find it. But it is a huge school district.
Well, and I think a lot of the teachers kind of fluctuates given any sort of a year, and we're building new schools all the time, and we're having to rezone. Our school is just currently going through a rezoning because our school is in the middle of a housing boom. We have tons and tons of houses and apartments that are being built literally across the street from our school, and then the schools that we should be sharing those kids with, they're not zoned for that school. So it's unfair to everybody. We are overcrowded, and then the other schools in our vicinity are empty. They have empty classrooms.
I was going to say, because your school hasn't even been open that long.
This is our 5th year.
5th year, and it's already at capacity.
We actually opened crowded.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we opened over capacity.
Well, I know because our kids, at least my kids, are now in their 20s. Your kids are slightly younger than mine. And I know, like, with the overcrowding issue in our area has been this way forever, because again, for a long time, they weren't building any schools. And it seems like at least in the last 5 or 10 years, we've done a lot better job of building a lot more schools.
Much better.
So there are not as many overcrowded schools, but there was a lot of schools that got built and they were brand new and they were over capacity from day one.
Absolutely. And it's, they take into consideration as much as they possibly can take into consideration when they're making plans. But clearly, it takes a long time to get buildings of those sizes zoned and planned and financed, and then groundbreaking, and then all of that kind of stuff. Within that time frame, all the other things have changed.
Right.
There are more houses, or there are more houses that have turned into more family neighborhoods that had maybe previously been owned by elderly residents whose kids had gone already through the system. And so it just kind of, when you have that turnover in neighborhoods.
Well, it's been very, very challenging. And I know for all my clients and friends that are teachers, especially when they were teaching the younger kids, I know parents' questions always would be, what's that ratio between students and teachers? And I know some of them, I don't know what it's supposed to be, but I know there's some years where every teacher friend of mine was like, man, I have almost 40 kids in a 4th grade class. It obviously affects the educational process and the work that a teacher has to do. So I think that's part of why you see these teachers sort of sometimes move around a little bit. But again, it's the question I get. And as a realtor, you have to be very careful when people move here and they start looking in an area, and especially with like elementary schools, because we have a lot. There's like 65 elementary schools.
Yeah.
And you can literally move 2 blocks over in the same neighborhood and the school zoning switch. And they'll ask me, well, is that school better than this school? And as a realtor, I have to be very careful with the answers that I say. But as teachers and friends of yours that are teachers that work all over this school district, like what are the kind of things that go behind the scenes that in your opinion, as a teacher that works in these schools, like what makes a school, I always say the reputation, if it's good or bad. I don't know if it really is good or bad, but sometimes you hear reputations of schools, this one's a better school than that one. And how does that work?
As somebody who's been doing this for so long, and I have so many friends that have been teachers, and I have more friends that have put kids through the school system, I feel like every single school in this district is really amazing. There is not a teacher that I know of that is just kind of skating through the day. Right. We are all doing the very best we can with what we're given. Now, are there inequities in the district? Of course there are, because we've got schools that are in more affluent neighborhoods. And so those PTAs or PTOs or whatever parent-teacher organization they have raise a
more
significant amount of money, and they can pay for the salary for an art teacher for their elementary school or a PE teacher, whereas other schools that are in the more at-risk neighborhoods don't have that, because it's not because the parents don't want it and couldn't support it. There, it's the finances are just simply not there. And you've got parents who are working 2 or 3 or 4 jobs, and you have people who are living 2 or 3 families in a home because that's kind of what their current situation is. And then you have people who are single parents living in 5,000 square feet by themselves. So,
right.
There's inequity in everything.
Right.
That's just kind of the way life works. And so the schools aren't really much different than that. They're really a reflection of their immediate area.
Well, I try to explain to people, I always felt like you can get a good education at any school if you just get involved and interact. I remember when I first moved to the south end of Reno, and there were no middle schools down there. If you were in the south end of Reno, everyone south went to Pine Middle School.
Absolutely.
And I remember my kids at the time were like in 1st grade, and my ex-wife was like, they're not going to Pine Middle School. And I'm like, why? I go, just because a school has a little bit of a different demographic, or maybe some kids that have more money than others. I go, that's how the world works.
Diversity is good for everybody.
I totally think so. I grew up in a high school in Las Vegas, where when I tell longtime Vegas residents where I went to high school, they look at me like I went to some sort of prison inmate high school. And I'm like, we got good education there. My life turned out just fine going to a school that nobody would say that's a good school.
Absolutely.
And I just find it hard how they figure out, how do you measure a school versus not school? I know when kids were younger, I always hated the week where the kids would have to go in and do the testing.
Oh.
And so again, it's always hard sometimes as teachers, because I hear people complain all the time about, it'd be nice certain things got taught in school, like money or nutrition or home ec things that maybe we learned as kids that they
100%.
don't do anymore.
Absolutely.
And I always wonder, like, are there things and initiatives that maybe the school district's trying to do that they just can't afford to do, or just in today's world they can't do?
I feel like a lot of the things that people are saying should be taught, the finance and the budgeting and that kind of stuff. I believe that is at a state level. Those are things that schools in the district could create an elective for, but I feel like they're wanting the kids to have other experiences like band and art, which is just as important. And a lot of the skills that we were taught in school. I had a budgeting class. I took typing on an old typewriter with
no letters
on the keys. I remember somebody, like my teacher, made actual photocopies of his own personal checks that had like the account number scratched out.
Right.
And we had like
auto shop and metal class.
We had auto shop, we had metals, we had woodworking, we had all that stuff. I still have my little wood derby card that I made when I was in 8th grade. I'm 56. So, those kinds of classes have fallen, and I don't necessarily want to say by the wayside, because I know that there are some schools that still have them, but I think it just is a decision that's made on a school-by-school basis, and it's not something that is mandated by the state. And so schools are sort of like, well, we really need to, we need to get our test scores up, so we got to work harder on math. And it's like, kids need recess. They need things, they need to learn skills. And one of the things that, as my children are getting older, has become really important is sharing with your students, whether they're your kids or whether they're your grandkids, that trades are important.
Oh, absolutely.
I have, as you know, I have twins, and one is going to UNR.
I love this story, by the way.
And the other one is working at an HVAC company, and he's already saved $15,000 toward a house. The dude's going to be making more money than I am within the next 2 years, and I've got 25 years in and a master's degree.
Right.
So there is something to be said for trades. We cannot survive as a society on white-collar workers. We need our worker bees. And there's so much money to be made for people who are willing to put in the hard work.
I mean, my son, he's in construction too. He did go to college because he was able to go pretty much for free on scholarship.
Right.
So he didn't end up with any student loan debt. But same thing. He's in construction. He tells me all the time. He's 27 years old. And what he does for a living, he goes, Dad, I can't find anyone under 60 that does what he does. And again, selling houses, anything to do with anything housing, all those businesses. Mm-hmm. And I was loving to see how this is going to play out for your two kids. I remember you posting all about it, where one's going to HVAC and one's going to college. And not that college is bad.
College is not bad.
I just think people have to be careful with getting a degree and loads of debt for something that they think is going to be this great, amazing job that may not actually be.
I ask my students, how many of you are going to go to college? And the vast majority of my kids raise their hand. And I said, how many of you are going to college because that's something that your parents are really pushing on you? And it's the majority of kids. A lot of them don't want to go to college, or they're really unsure. And so let them travel, let them work, let them take a couple of years off and maybe get a feel for what real life is all about.
Well, because most people, when they go to college at 18, and you're supposed to figure out what you want to be for the rest of your life.
It's ridiculous. I don't even know what I want to be for the rest of my life. And
we're in our 50s. We joke about this all the time. And I explain to people all the time, if you're going to go to college, you just got to be careful with what kind of debt and stuff you're going to get in.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't know what I was going to do past college. My degree ended up in finance and economics, as I figured that someday I wanted to run my own business. I wanted to learn about money and finance, and it's something I'm going to talk a lot more about as a second career for myself past this, because I just feel like these younger people have no place to get it, and they don't connect with most 50-plus-year-old people that have kind of been through the wars for 30 years. So I'm hoping to be able to educate a bunch of young people on this particular topic. But it's just the education thing is so changing from when you and I were in elementary school and middle school.
It's definitely shifting. And I feel like when we were going to school, trades were frowned upon. They were looked down 100%. Upon. They were the kids who couldn't make it in a regular college setting. Quite frankly, my son that's in HVAC is highly intelligent, but he has dyslexia, and he struggled and worked his buns off all the way through school, all the way through high school. Had a great GPA. I think his overall GPA was like a 3.7. But he knew that he didn't want to go to college because he had worked really, really hard just to get through high school. And he's like, I don't want to keep doing that. And he's a really hard worker, and he likes to learn. And he comes home every day and shows me pictures of what he did. And he talks about what he did. And I know more about HVAC now
than you ever did.
Than I thought I would ever know. It's so fun to share his excitement and to watch him. So he's still learning. He's just not learning in a college setting. That is something that is so valuable. And it's one of those skills that he can take anywhere. He could go anywhere. He could go live internationally and do HVAC. They have heating and air conditioning in other countries.
It's a little different how the power works.
Might be a little different. But it's one of those things where he is seeing the value and is feeling valued with his work, whereas my other son, who's working part-time at a clothing store, making not great money, getting yelled at by customers all the time because the public is not always kind.
I would just say to people, everybody is smart in their own way. Absolutely. And you have to figure out how your brain works and what you're smart at. Like I said, when my son talks about stuff at his construction sites and jobs, half the time I'm looking like I have no clue what he's talking about. And I'm with you. I have a master's degree in business, but his brain works that way. He sees something, he can figure it out, he builds it, it's all great. So with all that being said, we'll full circle this back around to when people come to Reno and they want to move here and they start asking me about like what schools are good or how they differentiate one school from another, or if they're interested in certain programs that, like, I know Worcester High School created a program because their attendance was or they had so few kids and that area was landlocked that got kids from all over town to go to their school.
Program.
Right. So there are schools and ways for kids to kind of figure out what is important to them or their parents to help them figure out what schools. How should people, or where can they look to find out what programs that are offered that are not kind of your standard, hey, I just went to this school and I just followed the normal program?
The cool thing about Reno is that we have definitely expanded our thought process on how we want our kids to exit our K through 12 programs. And I really feel like there are so many options now with schools like AACT where they are able to practice with journalism, and they can do culinary, and they can do paramedic stuff. So they're learning the basics. So if that's something that they want to turn into a career, they're already going in with a lot of background knowledge than somebody who would have just come out of a regular high school program is. I feel like our sports programs are really excellent as well. But honestly, it boils down to involvement from the parents.
Right.
And parents have to be involved in their kids' lives, not just their education, but just in their lives. They have to know what's going on. They have to know who their friends are. Do they like their kids' friends? Are their kids' friends, the Eddie Haskells of the world who are like, hi, Mrs. Cleaver, and then behind your back, they're horrible and a bad influence on your students. But we have Infinite Campus, which is absolutely, it's not user-friendly as a teacher, but it is an amazing tool for parents and for students. It's an app you put on your phone. You get notified when your kid is marked absent or tardy. You get notified when your kid has an assignment due that didn't get turned in, or when a grade is entered. And it is an immediate way for you to get feedback on your students. Unfortunately, I have parents who don't look at Infinite Campus until the last week of a semester. Right. And then it's like, oh gosh, what can we do to get the grade up? And it's like, well, you could have been looking at Infinite Campus from the get-go.
Right.
And I tell my students, Infinite Campus is also your friend. They need to be able to start managing themselves because parents have busy lives. And especially if you have more than one child, or you have kids that are playing travel sports or competitive cheer or whatever, there's a lot of balls up in the air. And so you want your kids to start being able to be accountable and responsible for themselves. I tell my students all the time, if there's something that you see in Infinite Campus that you believe is a mistake, it's your job to bring that to your teacher's attention, because teachers make mistakes. I've entered grades incorrectly because I was entering so quickly that a 45 turned into a 4 out of 50 because I missed the 5. My students like,
what happened? But then that goes back to the whole having a relationship with the teacher,
absolutely,
not being uncomfortable to go and talk to them. It's one of the things like, so my 22-year-old has now got a real estate license, started working with me. And the thing I love the most about her is she's not afraid to go talk to anyone. And it's a huge skill. It's like, just because I'm questioning, hey, Miss Carter, something happened here. I'm not saying you're a terrible teacher, you did something wrong. I'm like, what happened? I thought I did better than that. And you're like, oh, my bad. Like, it's just having that communication, whether it's with the students, with the parents. I think that was one thing that we always did, is just made sure we were involved. When your son is 6'8", everybody knows who he is. So it's like certain behavioral things, you can't get in trouble. There's just all those kind of factors that go involved in it. But I know when people are coming here from other areas, because I think a lot of local people don't even know where to find some of this information.
There's a lot of information about schools that people don't know about. They don't necessarily know where to go. The district's website is a good start.
Right.
School counselors are amazing resources. And also, quite frankly, if you are living in a specific area of town, Facebook groups. So I live in the South Reno area. There's a group called South Reno Moms. And I am telling you that if you need something,
go there.
You go there. And within 10 minutes,
I'll have more of the
you've
answers.
got all of the things. And you at least have, if you don't have all of the things, you've got a really good jumping off point. I mean, it can be something as basic as, what's your favorite sushi place, to, hey, I've got a kid going to this school and we've also been accepted to this school. What have been your experiences? The only thing that, we ask people just as humans is to not talk poorly about teachers.
Right. Well, that's what I was just going to ask you, because when we were talking about teachers, we get people and you hear about teacher shortages or teachers getting out of the business, or, for example, in our community, we have weather and snow, and sometimes school gets delayed, start or postponed. And what the people don't realize is my house might be sunny and beautiful, but because the school district is so spread out that if schools 20 minutes, 30 minutes from my house in a different part of town have crazy weather, they have to the whole school district stops.
Right.
And so people always have their opinions. And I always used to say, I did not want to be the person who had to decide at 2 a.m. that at 6 a.m. the buses weren't going to come.
No, me neither.
And so I just wonder how the community can sometimes be a little more supportive and a little less teachers are this and school district that, where, if you read nationally, they always say such negative things about Nevada schools and Nevada school districts. And most of the people that I know that live here, that went to the schools here, maybe went to the university here, all seem to be doing pretty well in their lives, versus we went to these same schools that they keep crushing.
The school district has to do what's best for the majority of the kids who are unable to get to school without the aid of a parent.
Right.
So we have so many kids who are walking or who are getting bused. And even this morning,
Yeah, it was cold.
it was cold and I actually slid out.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't even dawn on me this morning when I was getting up, because where I live versus where I work, which is 15 miles away, it's a totally different climate.
Yeah.
And I think that that is something that people don't understand about Reno. And so the other thing that goes hand in hand with that is that schools are very frequently seen as babysitters.
Yeah.
And
Especially with the littler kids.
If you're on a 2-hour delay and you've got to be at work and now you've got to call your boss and tell them that you're going to be late, or you're left scrambling to find care or a neighbor who can help you out, that's very stressful.
Mm.
And it's absolutely understandable. But we're not babysitters, we're educators. And our job is to keep your kids safe first and then to teach them.
Right.
And so part of that is just the whole fact of getting them to school.
Well, and that safety dynamic is something new. I said I went to a high school that nobody would say was a great school, but the things that have happened over the last 10 years or 15 years that you hear about, all these school shootings and all these things, is completely different than things you and I dealt with, where, some kid might be aggressive and you get in a fight. That's a little different than being concerned that you have to have metal detectors to walk in the building.
I don't know a single teacher who doesn't walk into their room on a daily basis and give a quick sweep look of what would I do if.
Right.
I have 4 doors in my classroom that people can come in and out of. It's a lot of doors to manage.
Yeah. You're in a big classroom.
I'm in
it's
a
big
classroom because I am teaching art, and it's a large classroom, but I have 1 door that leads outside, 2 doors that lead to the classroom next door, and 1 door that leads out into the hallway. A lot of points of entry for me. It's terrifying. I mean, that wasn't something that I ever
dealt with
thought I would ever be dealing with when I started teaching 25 years ago. I'm like, I just want to read books to kids and teach them how to add and subtract.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh my God, I might have to be a human shield to expect a teacher to be your children's babysitter, their caregiver, and their life protector. It's a big shoe to fill.
Oh, absolutely.
And which is why there's such a huge turnover right now. Teachers are screaming from the rooftops that...
Are they having a hard time getting enough? I mean, you hear the rumors of there not being enough teachers.
Not enough.
So we could always use more teachers.
Not only is there not enough teachers, but there is a shortage in education programs in colleges in the nation.
Right.
So when I was at UNR going to get my master's degree for education, gosh, there were probably a couple of hundred of us in the group. I think there's less than 100 right now. And it's just getting lower and lower because nobody wants to do this job, because everybody kind of sees how teachers are treated.
Paid, and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
We won't go into all those details.
No, and that, quite frankly, to me, it's not a political thing.
Right.
I think it's just a social thing. And I don't know a single solitary teacher who would say no to any parent who wanted to come in and take a look at their classroom.
Oh, yeah.
I would welcome any parent.
Sit in there for the day.
Come on in and have a seat and see what we deal with, and listen to how loud the classrooms are, and listen to how loud a building is with 1,300 middle schoolers.
I mean, I know the feeling, Kate, just from coaching Little League sports or youth sports, and you're dealing with parents and just coaching a sport, let alone teaching and having a kid for 9 months at a time. Right. And I always say, people ask me all the time, like, why don't I coach sports? Because if I could just coach the kids and never talk to the parents,
that'd be great.
Great. And I know how that felt when I was the parent, and you try never to be that parent that is more the issue and the problem.
Exactly.
But what I really want people to realize is, in the Washoe County School District, whatever you hear, whatever the rumor is, whatever you read, I always say the best thing to do is go talk to teachers, go talk to administrators, go find a way to sit in those classrooms. And if you're new to an area, whether you want to move here to be a teacher, or you're moving here because you have kids that are going to be going to the schools here, like you said, if you talk to the people and get involved, there is no test score or no number to me that's going to say, we're rated this, but you can't go get a good education.
Test scores are different.
Right.
I don't think that test scores accurately represent the state of education. I think that test scores are a snapshot of exactly what that kid was doing at that moment of that day. It's sort of like your driver's license picture. Right. It's like, it's either really good or it's really bad. And it kind of depends on the day that you're having, right? So test scores are test scores.
Right.
They're not any sort of an indicator of how well teachers are doing their job. And I think a lot of teachers get frustrated because parents get frustrated, and instead of going to that teacher to have a discussion, they go right to the principal. Yeah. And I don't know a single teacher who wouldn't be willing to sit down and have a discussion with a parent. We're all there for that. That's my job.
Right.
My job is to be a teacher and to be an educator and to support you in teaching your child, but
they got to be supportive too, right?
But it's not my full responsibility. When I go home at the end of the day, your kid's not at my house.
No.
They're at your house. Now, I would be more than happy to take some of my kids home, but the other ones, I'm like, you can go home and hang out with your parents.
So as closing this all up, what would be something we would want people to know about Washoe County School District and kids who go to school here and being a teacher? Like, what would be something we would want to change versus what the rumors are? I mean, I've lived here 35 years, and it's rare that I hear positive things. And my experience with my kids has been nothing but positive.
Absolutely.
Especially even at Pine, when people were like, we don't want to go to Pine. My kids had a great experience there. Now, we knew the principal. I knew a handful of the teachers.
But you made
we were
an effort
super
to do
involved.
that.
100% we did. And that made it so that when there is an issue, you already have a relationship with that person, so they know I'm not coming at you aggressively because I'm upset about something. Like, hey, what happened? So, what would you say to people?
I would say that people need to go in with an open mind and they need to make their own decisions. Right. Rumors are just that. They're rumors. And if you have a question or you have a concern, address it with whatever or whomever that person is. If it's the teacher or the principal or the counselor or whoever it is. It's just sort of like, I always told parents that I would believe half of what their students said about them if they believed half of what their students said about me. It's like playing the game operator, right? And you think it's so easy, and at some point you're like, the duck was purple, and you're like, that's not even remotely what I said at the beginning. And that's the way things kind of spiral out of control. And I think that if people would stop being so busy and so wrapped up in what their neighbors are saying and get involved themselves and make their own decisions and their own opinions, I think just overall, generally, society would be a better place, but our education system would certainly benefit.
And I was thinking about one other thing while we were sitting here talking about this, is that for the people who have kids that are grown like mine, or people who never had kids that don't or have very minimal interaction with the school district, these people need to understand how important the school district is, even though they don't technically have a kid in a school.
They're the ones who are ringing up your groceries. They're the ones who are cutting your hair or who are changing your tires. They've all come out of this school system. So just because you don't have a school-age child or you don't have any children or your children are out doesn't mean that the quality of education of the community that you live in isn't important, because it's extraordinarily important. 100%. And that is why I'm always surprised when schools aren't supported, because I just think that so many people don't understand the value that schools bring to a community as a whole. And it could be so much better if we just had
a little bit of help,
a little bit of support, and not help. I don't need money. I need you to like back me up if I tell you that your kid is doing
the money's
something,
just one piece. There's
the money is one piece. It's, don't play your kid against me, and don't. It's all the things. Oh boy, it would be significantly so much more easy.
One, I just want to appreciate you coming and talking a little bit about it, giving a different perspective than just what people can look up online. So for those of you that watch videos that I put out all the time, put a comment out there, ask a question. Kate and I, between us, know a ton of teachers, administrators, principals. And if you're trying to find out something about a specific school, a specific area, how your kids can get involved in a certain program that they need to go to a certain school for, comment below, reach out to us. And by all means, please subscribe to the channel. We love to put all this information about Reno and Tahoe, Northern Nevada. And also know that public school isn't the only option here for people that are looking for school things. We'll talk about private and charter schools and all this stuff on another day. But our school district, don't always believe what you're reading here. And just know that Kate and I will be happy to answer any questions you have. So thanks for watching the video. Reach out to us anytime. We'd love to hear comments below.